Hello again, this is UML Operator. Okay, in this session, we're going to touch, and I want to emphasize touch on tag values in order to have deeper conversations in later videos. So I want to introduce tag values. I'm not going to go in depth. Some of the benefits of tag values, what tag values are, what tag values are used for, how to add tag values manually, and if we have time, we're going to touch on how to add dynamic tag values, with control boxes and other tooling to support adding tag values. As usual, I want to get you to Sparx welcome page for help and the ability for you to read ahead. So we're going to go to the Start tab. We're going to go to Help, hit the down caret. We're going to open Help, and it is going to launch the welcome page on Sparx. From here, we're going to go to Modeling Fundamentals. Then we're going to go to Modeling Elements. And then from Modeling Elements, we're going to go to Tag Values. And you can read ahead, go through the Learn More. Eventually, you skip ahead if you want to. You can go to Advanced Tagged Management. But we're going to cover this subject in a later video. So we're just going to touch on tag values at a high level to help you get started with the understanding, and also to support some other video content I'm going to be creating in the near future. So what are tag values? Tag values allow you to add additional properties or attributes to UML elements, and that's pretty much all UML elements. We're going to be looking at class elements today and maybe a requirement element, but you can add tag values to any element in UML, all right? And then be able to go beyond what is provided by default following UML or object-oriented design principles. So what are tag values used for? So tag values provide a flexible way to capture specific information relevant to your model. Not in any particular order, but the order of my own priority and the benefits of using tag values. For me, number one is documentation and annotation. This can be useful when you want to add additional information to an element, the intelligence of your model and design, especially for documentation, collaboration, model reviews, and other decisioning. The next one is profiles and extensions. So when we're in design, and we'll come up with the basic understanding of the attributes and operations, but we may want to add additional properties, features, attributes into the design and the development in order to support a specific objective. This leads us into the benefit of custom attributes. So when you need to add specific, element information that may not be covered by standard UML properties. And later, this is going to be important when we're getting into model-driven generation. Maybe we're creating our own MDGs, or we're looking or purchasing other MDGs that are used that we want to plug in or use within Sparx Enterprise Architect. So another important benefit of tag values, and you're going to see this a lot when we get into some other external tooling, and we're going to touch on Sparx EA requirement element has some special tag values that they brought into this particular configuration. So we'll touch on that when we get there. With UML, probably the most important one is around stereotypes. So when you're defining custom stereotypes, you can use tag values to specify additional information, intelligence, or characteristics that are associated with that stereotype. And I'll give an example of that in just a short moment. And last but not least is constraints and annotation. So I'm just going to touch on this one, because we're going to talk about constraints in elements, because the three properties of an element, stereotypes, tag values, and constraints, they go hand in hand. I don't want to confuse you when we're talking about constraints, but you can add constraints using tag values or support rules-based constraints using tag values in your design. And we might not get to that in this session, but that's going to be an important consideration in later sessions. All right, let's get into adding tag values. So let's go over to this element right here, this class element called dog. I'm going to go ahead and double click it to open the dialog box. So there's a couple of ways to add tag values. There's no notes or explanation for this class. It's blank. But if you look down here on the lower right side of this dialog box, you see something called tags. And we can see the tags that are exposed for this class element called dog, right? Now you can add tags. I'm going to cancel. You can remove tags. We're going to delete this by this X. So this tag value is now gone. And you can add that tag or another tag back in. And let's add a tag in. We're going to call it breed cycle. We're going to put the value 4 in here. And now we've added that back in. And then you can't change once you add easily. Here you can't edit this, right? Doesn't allow you to edit. I'm glad it doesn't do that, by the way. But you can edit the value that we just put in. You know, hey, we're in breed cycle 5, we're in breed cycle 4, or whatever the tag value is. So tag values are made up of, you've got your property, and then you have your value, and then you can add notes. You can explain what the breed cycle is, what took place in the breed cycle. You can add that in. These are typical things that you might not have in your code, your development, but you would have in your documentation, your intelligence, your design considerations, and so on. So in the case of stereotypes, we have a stereotype simply called type, right? So it doesn't matter, you have something called type. You can use tag values to further extend the properties or characteristics of that stereotype. In this particular case, we have disposition. So this type of dog, we want to consider the disposition of the dog, relaxed in a particular scenario, or design consideration of the element and the type of element, the stereotype of element. Let's look at tag values from a tool-specific information or characteristic. So this is Sparx Enterprise Architect, of course. We have here a requirement element that you can find if you go into requirements, right in front of me right here. You'll see that you have some extended requirements, and this happens to be a regulatory requirement. So let's go ahead and select this one. If you're looking over in the lower right side of my screen here, you can see there's a tag value that's been added called government, the property, the value. I'm not sure if this has any notes. No, it doesn't. Cancel. So, but if you go back to the element properties, there's been some tag values that Sparx has brought in, such as priority. There's some memo fields here that you can use in your documentation, all 50 states, in this particular requirement, right? So this is an example of tool-specific tag values or tool-specific information relevant to this element type for a regulatory requirement. And if you look at functional, they've added specific tag values for those. So how do I know these are tag values? If I go to my local SQL database, and we created this for demonstration purposes, and I go down to a table called T-Objects Properties, this is the table that has all of the tag value data, all right? The T-Objects table is completely different, it has all your elements, but this is where your tag values are. Here are those requirement tag values I was just talking about. So priority, you see those are here. So that's how I can prove they're here. So we go back over to the element instance in Sparx EA, priority, and then here are these memo fields under element, but these are tag values, where this is a separate entry for tag values. So all the tag values that I've shown you so far, with the exception of the MDG or the Sparx special tag values, they're in the settings tab under UML types, and you can go to tag value types. And here you can define your tag value types. And so now these would be specific. Let's say, for instance, LOE, which stands for level of effort. And I'm not going to cover how to do this in this video. I'm just showing this to you. So in this particular case, we have a tag name, right, and a description, called LOE. And in it, it's type, value, and then these are the values that you can choose from. All right. So let's go into cat, right? And the level of effort to breed a cat. All right. So I'm going to go to tags this way. I'm going to click add. I'm just going to type LOE. It's not case sensitive, so it will find the proper, see that, spelling of L, capital L, O, and E. Now, I get a drop-down box here where I can put, well, what's the level of effort in breeding this cat? And I can say it's complex, right? So now for cat, I've added a level of effort, complex, breeding cycle 3, and what other tag values that I want to use, the version of the breed, however I'm doing that, and so on. So that allows you to add dynamic tag values so you're not fat fingering. Here you stand a chance if you're manually inputting them across all your modelers or even yourself of misspelling or fat fingering a tag value property name. Next, let's look at this from a different perspective, right? So we have a superclass called shape, and we have two subclasses, one's circle and one's rectangle. We've defined the attributes and the operations, and using C#, we have basically programmed these out. So you don't see tag values here. How do you expose those? We're going to double click in here. We're going to go to elements and we're going to turn on tag values, right? Now you see the tag values that are shown for these particular elements. And each one of them has a stereotype, doesn't have to. Let's go to properties and we're going to go to tags and let's click on first shape. So we're in tags. It has a manual tag value called type. Its value is shape. When we go to circle, you see that it inherits the shape tag value of shape, right? Shape, type is shape. Circle has a tag value, circle. Rectangle inherits from shape and has its own tag value of rectangle. So what does this look like from a coding perspective? Again, let's just pick circle. And let's look down at the code. You don't see tag values in code. They're used to extend the modeling characteristics of the application, the software, the system. So tag values, as I had stated earlier, are used to extend the meaning of your design and your applications. Let's look at documentation. Let's run a report on this. All right, so select the diagram. We're going to, in publish, we're going to go to build report. We're going to use the report, model report template. Let's just take the default, hit generate, and it's generating the report. We're going to view it in internal Sparx. I'm not going to launch Word, so we're going to view this. And here we have the model report. So model report, that's how this canned report is set up. We have the stereotypes that are here for each one of these, rectangle, and then shaped is down at the bottom. All right, we have those, but we don't have tag values. They're not showing up in this reporting. So we create reports to expose everything about the model or specific things about the model. So in this case, we're going to run another report. All right, so publish reports. Report dialog box pops up. We're going to choose solution approach. This is a custom template we have. Let's go ahead and look at that template. You can see in this template, we want to report on tag values. And again, I'll cover reporting in a later session. And then we want to show the connections between elements and that kind of thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this. We're going to run it again. Generate documentation dialog box. It's going to pop up. Let's go ahead and step on this other report. We're going to hit generate. It's done. We're going to hit view. And you can see here information about each one of the elements, and we have tag values. Plus we have our association showing between our particular element. So in tag values, we've got the property type, the value, and the notes for each one of these. So as you're doing your reporting on each element, all of those are showing up. Okay, hopefully in this session, you now know what tag values are, what tag values are used for, how to add a tag value manually, and even how to build a dynamic tag value with a control box. And we'll get into tag values deeper in other sessions because we're actually going to need them in some of the work that we're doing. I just wanted to spend a few minutes with you today to introduce you to tag values so I can move faster through the content in those next videos. Thanks very much for watching. Talk to you all later, and happy modeling.